I think it's a particularly exciting time for all of us to be here. I joined in this industry just a little less than 4 years ago. Most recently, I joined from Google. So this is my fourth EC. And when I was here 4 years ago, as an industry, we were still talking pretty extensively about will it be cloud or will it be on-prem. Even last year when I was here in a panel, we were talking about hybrid versus the cloud. And what I think is so interesting in a presentation about business communications is we're at a moment in time which is a revolution in business communications. We've entitled this presentation about rethinking business communications, but I think the way to think about it is it's actually rethinking business. And the notion is about how communications is at the core of how all of our customers are going through their own digital transformations. So it's important not to think of it as simply just the communication element, but to think about it more broadly about how it fundamentally rethinks business. So before we dive in, let me sort of take us a little bit of a walk down memory lane, and let's look at the music business, just as a very, very simple example. Years ago, in the music world, we went to our local music retailer and we bought albums or CDs or 8-tracks or what have you. I remember that stuff, I'm old. And again, somebody else had made the decision as to how they're gonna package that music into some final form. So you might not want but a couple songs on the album, but you had to buy the whole album because that's the way it was delivered. Then along came Apple and the cloud. And they said, you know, that model about how you have to buy music in a bundled way, we're going to tear that apart, and it's all going to be unbundled. And so now what you have is, think about our life in terms of the consumption of music. It's in the palm of our hand. It's on demand for us at any time. We only buy the songs that we want. It's subscribable as a stream or downloadable. It's even mashable. What's happened to the music business is because you've introduced choice and this unbundling into the music business, you've seen this explosion in the consumption of music relative to the old retail style of bundled music distribution. And I would maintain that business communications is no different. That how profound the changes in the music business have been is that the level of changes in business communication is similar. So let's go back now, think about business communications. Remember I said at the beginning, I said, we're now talking about rethinking not just business communications, but fundamentally rethinking business. At the core of everything that happens in business is communication. The key to everything is the connection that's created through communications. And we've grown up in a world where our communications are tethered to some physical device. Matter of fact, we haven't thought about them that separate between the physical device, whether it's a hard line shown in this picture, or the cell phone. We tend to think about communications tethered to a particular device. What's happening, though, is there's this renaissance underway in communications where it's fueled by software and the cloud. We need to think about this differently than communications being the telco elements. Now communications is software. So when you think about how we've delivered communications or how we're consuming communications, we live today in a world where there's UCaaS solutions, and many of us, including Vonage, are purveyors or providers of UCaaS-based solutions. And that's how we've taken the cloud and unified discrete elements of the communication stack, different modes of communication across audio, video, and messaging into a common unified solution. Then we've got CCaaS. CCaaS is sort of analogous to UCaaS, but now focused on not the PBX application, which has really been the principal focus of UCaaS, but it's now been focused on the contact center application. Think of it as a use case. UCaaS has been generally focused on the PBX use case, and now CCaaS focused on the contact center use case. Now enter CPaaS. And CPaaS takes those same communication elements, and you can see in the graphic of the Lego pieces, and it says, well, I'm going to compile them together as separate microservices, and then developers can take those microservices expressed as software APIs and embed them in all sorts of other things, your website, mobile app, business process, workflow, what have you. I would maintain that we're in this alphabet soup of acronyms, and the acronyms have to die. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm surprised they let me get away with that. It doesn't matter whether it's UCaaS, CCaaS, or CPaaS. As customers, I don't think our customers want to consume this and be confused by this acronym world that we live in. Rather, I think there's just a couple basic questions about what you're looking for in business communications, and you've got to be able to answer those questions. Only thing that matters is what business communications enables. So think of it just kind of simply. Does it make my business more productive? Does it help my business's ability to communicate with my customers? And ultimately, does communication, or is communication at the core of how I'm trying to digitally transform my business? Because you think at all of our customers and the enterprises in this audience, we're all looking over our shoulder at the more digitally transformed competitor who's got a a bullseye on our back coming after our business. The way these three questions come together is, I think you can distill it down to a single question, is, does communications drive better business outcomes? It's as simple as that. And so we need to think about how we drive communications as, how does it drive better business outcomes for our customers? We all know that we've gotten very focused on elements of it. Well, I'm going to move my PBX to the cloud. I'm going to move my contact center to the cloud, and so forth. But the number of use cases that are being created with cloud-based communications is nearly limitless. The way that this is being architected, the way to think about it, and I would look at this slide from the top down. Where as an industry, in my view, we've gotten, I think, a little bit overly segmented, is we look at the application space, principally the PBX and the contact center, and we say, okay, that's a different segment. And the world's going to consume that application in a particular go-to-market way that I'm going to ask my customers to subscribe to it. And so that's really what UCaaS and CCaaS have been about. And then the other side is the communication APIs, is saying, okay, well, now there are virtually a limitless number of ways to consume that functionality through these microservices into that underlying website, mobile app, business process, or what have you. The key element is the underlying platform. And I go back to the music example. Whether you buy your music packaged in an album, or whether you buy them a song at a time, think of the underlying music as the platform. It's the same music. All we're talking about is different delivery models and, quite frankly, different revenue models traditionally. So the way that we've re-architected our platform is a microservices architecture. So if you take the PBX as an example, that may be 300 separate features. Think of those as microservices that are optimized together in that use case. Those 300 features or 300 microservices sit in the platform that can be expressed as that PBX or expressed as that contact center, but also can be sold unbundled, one at a time, expressed or consumed as software APIs. Because it's a microservices architecture, it has to sit on the public cloud. And we're unique in that we put our whole Vonage Business Cloud infrastructure on the public cloud, because the nature of a microservices infrastructure means at any given moment, I'm at zero or maybe sort of near infinity in terms of my usage of that feature. So the auto-scaling ability of the public cloud is critical to do that. And then finally, on the bottom of this graphic, you have to have the foundational elements that ultimately I've got to be able to terminate that message, terminate that voice call, what have you. So having the infrastructure, the peering relationships, the carrier contracts, so that I can terminate the underlying telco is critical. So I want to sort of ask that I'm going to talk about a use case here. I'm going to ask to roll a tape, and this is what I'm challenging everybody with is think about different use cases. A 30-second video with a terrible actor who leads it, but you'll see it in 1 second. I'm going to ask you to roll the tape.
Do you want to hear something remarkable?
A large restaurant chain had customers texting in orders. The problem was, they'd cook their meal in 5 minutes, but the customer walks in 35 minutes. And what do you got? Soggy fries. Now they geofence each location with software that texts the kitchen and customer, ensuring each fry is crispy crisp.
And do you know what? It's the end of soggy fries.
When it comes to business, communication is everything. Learn more at vonage.com/everything.
Okay. So let's bring this together and think about a use case you just saw on soggy French fries. How in the world could communications have something to do with soggy French fries? We think about communications where I'm going to take your enterprise telephony to the cloud. I'm going to take your contact center to the cloud. How in the world does communications help this particular customer? This is a real-life example of a 500-unit restaurant chain that was just trying to build their takeout business. So they were having customers text in orders, but again, as the commercial shows, they didn't know when the customer was going to show up, so they didn't know when to cook the food. So now you use communications to go through and help them with a business outcome because this restaurant chain simply wanted to build the takeout business. So what we believe when we think about the future of communications is that, remember I said at the outset, we're rethinking not just business communications, but business. And when it comes to business, communication is everything. Think of communication as the rocket fuel for your digital transformation. And that increasingly, communications is based on software. When I think about the software side, let me use an example. If everybody in this audience were sitting here with your own, some internet-connected device, a phone, a tablet, a PC, what have you, and you were on your favorite website, you were in a particular app, I don't care whether it was Google Excel or G Suite or Exchange or Salesforce or Workday, it doesn't matter. I would maintain that where the future in our industry is going is that in every one of those apps or websites, there'll be a click to communicate opportunity. And the decision in terms of how you choose to communicate will be a function of the limitations of your device. So for instance, if your device doesn't have a camera, you're certainly not going to do video. If it doesn't have a speaker and a microphone, you can only do messaging. But it's going to be a limitation of the device itself, and it's going to be the personal preference of you. It's choice. And as communication is embedded in everything, it's going to be embedded via these very lightweight microservices. Those microservices are going to build use cases in virtually unlimited numbers. One of those use cases may in fact be to eliminate soggy French fries. That's how varied it can be. Gartner did a study not long ago and said enterprises, by 2020, the number of enterprises that will be embedding these communication elements, again, into their underlying workflows and business processes and apps and such, will grow to 30% by 2020. In 2017, it's 5%. So we're here at a very, very fun time, in my view, where an industry that was, I think, arguing prem versus cloud very, very recently is now moving to a place where it is about software and a platform, and it's about you're in this renaissance in communications where the amount of communication that's going to be embedded everywhere. Remember, you're no longer going to be tethered to one device, whether it's my cell phone or a hard line. It's now going to be everywhere. And so we think the companies who embrace innovation, create the best platform, and are agnostic about the delivery system are going to win tomorrow. So I'm out of time. Thank you very much. There are going to be a couple questions, but I want to lead you with this last point, which is business communications is changing business forever. We think that's very cool. And we think our future is really, really bright as an industry. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. So you talked about kind of this holistic platform, or kind of a not caring what the apps are. A lot of the audience going back into the CPE days is familiar with kind of a best of breed strategy, and maybe still would think that way about a cloud provider. I like this particular cloud provider's feature set for contact center, but somebody else for UCaaS. Is that going to be viable in the vision you see?
Yes, is a simple answer. I think that the notion, one of the beauties about the cloud is it enables you to have a best-of-breed choice more than the old line sort of ways we used to deliver software, where you sort of made a bet on a particular vendor to the exclusion of all else. The idea about the platform is not that you're forcing somebody one way or the other. It's that you have to, in a sense, the way I think about it is you have to abstract, if you will, the underlying call proc. You know, today somebody makes a decision about one vendor or the other and they don't talk to each other. At the end of the day, all the customer cares about is that I can do that piece of communications functionality. Now, I may choose somebody else's conferencing solution. Somebody may stick with a prem-based PBX and use this for their contact center and use it for N number of use cases through the APIs. It doesn't matter, but I'm just convinced that from a platform perspective, that microservices architecture sitting on the public cloud is critical.
Okay. And then one fairly quick question with a hopefully fairly short answer. You showed the example of the soggy fries, a restaurant chain, and that's, as you showed, solves a business problem. So do you expect to essentially be going to market as more of a vertical industry focused company where you kind of have your products are built not so much along sort of generic product functionality, but a solution for restaurants, a solution for healthcare, all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't think so. So the question is about sort of the verticalization of this. I don't think so. Communications is as horizontal as it comes, if you think about it. The point is I got to go back to use cases. Where are the use cases most important? If I'm a restaurateur, what do I care about? I got to turn tables. You have to show up for your reservation. So even if I make your reservation on OpenTable, the hostess or the maitre d', they call to confirm it because they have to make sure you're going to show up. If you're a doctor, dentist, lawyer, veterinarian, whatever, the whole thing is about you got to make sure people show up for the appointment. If you're a DHL or Federal Express or UPS, key to your success as a company is you got to make sure people are home so you don't have to pull that package back out and redeliver it. All of that lends itself to communications, to contextual communications going back and forth. So the idea is these tools will be used by those companies to build into what is important to them, not necessarily that we're building the finished product all the time about that's going to work for this industry and that.
So you won't build the solution, you'll enable them to build it.
That's exactly right.
Got it. All right, well, Alan, our time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Give Alan a hand.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alan.